So many people have been asking me, why did we choose this theme, music as a catalyst for nation building and community growth? And it's quite different from the theme we had last year, which looks specifically at how music therapy could be used with autism. And the reason being, we learned from last year's effort that many people were still confused about how music could be used for therapy, let alone what music therapy was. So we decided this year to just take one step back and to help us all to better understand what potential there is in music in the first place to help society. What are the ways that we can identify through this conference to actually find those functional strategies to use music to make that difference in our community outreach. Now, I know many of you, when we've been registering you, we had the delightful opportunity to look through your backgrounds and to see where you were coming from, and I know many of you are already steeped in some kind of community work. And so we really hope that what you will get out of this conference, and my presentation this morning is to try to open the lid and to unlock the variety of ways in which music has been known to function in society in ways that are psychosocially beneficial. And the title itself, Music as a Catalyst, as you know, when we talk about a catalyst, we're looking at something that ignites, that sparks, that stimulates, that actually creates the rate of a reaction. And it could be a person, it could be persons, it could be a thing, and even an event like this. And we see music's potential not only to work in the kind of clinical settings that we music therapists are privileged to work in, but also with many of you here, you may not come from a background of music therapy. Some have interest in entering music therapy. Some are curious about music therapy and might want to enhance your current skills with a little knowledge of music therapy. And we hope that what you will learn throughout this conference will give you inspiration, idea, functional tools. We're actually going to be having techniques, workshops, training, as much as we will be giving you a lot of information, research, and we hope that collectively it will give you a bag of ideas, a new set of tools that you can use to move forward in your own community. Now, music therapy itself is the clinical and evidence-based use of musical intervention. Now, let me unpack that. It's quite a mouthful. So when we talk about music therapy being clinical and evidence-based, for the most part, a lot of what drives music therapy in many advanced countries is this platform of research that underpins and guides what we're doing in practice. And why is that important? You will notice that we have a session that's been earmarked with Prof. Wheeler. She's been kind enough to speak on this subject, and we invited her because she is one of the world's foremost experts in this area. And we're looking at why research matters. We are introducing this idea in the conference in the hopes that as we venture out, and if we are going to take away the tools and the clinical ideas, we also understand that to do the clinical work properly, to do it effectively, it's going to be extremely important to conduct some kind of documentation, observation, and evaluation, and ultimately to be able to monitor and to chart our progress, to know whether the interventions that we are introducing, the kind of treatments that we are introducing, is it actually making a difference? And if it is making a difference, why is it making a difference? And how is it helping our populations? Without that knowledge, it is as good as sharing music, encouraging people to enjoy music, but not necessarily knowing whether it's working or how. And that's just too subjective. So for us, with the MMTA, we are very, very keen to also open up the opportunities for all of us that are here who are genuinely interested to know how to use our music skills to better serve the community and to open our minds to the possibilities of engaging in research. Now, music therapy is clinical. It's got that practical component. It's evidence-based. I was just talking about why the evidence is important to drive and underpin the clinical work. And it accomplishes individualized goals within the therapeutic relationship. What that means is music therapy is very much goal-driven. We have this overarching plan, what we call our program, and very frequently we have a structure to our whole series of interventions. So it's directed, it's focused, and within that goal, we break it into a set of individual objectives. I'm not going to go too much into the technical details, but when you go into your sessions later, some of the sessions are actually going to take you through the actual program, the goals, the objectives that are being created to accomplish those particular music therapy objectives. And you will learn all about that, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But at this point, I want to introduce to you the idea that music therapy is very much goal-driven. When they say individualized goals, it means that we work directly with our clients, we engage them, we try to figure out what would work best for this individual. And we don't assume that one size fits all. And personal preference, clients' preferences in music, cultural background, their education, all these factors, their personality could potentially affect the quality of the treatment outcome. And so we do individualize our goals, we do tailor-made clinical interventions, and that therapeutic relationship that comes after is extremely important, because it's not just about playing music and letting the music do its work without the intervention and the active influence of the music therapist. So there has to be that relational aspect, there has to be that music therapist involved in the process, spurring whatever treatment outcomes we anticipate and hope to accomplish. And you can see that from Prof. Rina's address just now, she was talking about how important it is to have a credentialed professional. And right now in Malaysia, one of the things that we are hoping to do with our MMTA is also to look at the possibility and to explore prospects. We'll be talking to all of you of setting up some form of training program. We've got a lot of requests, a lot of people have been asking ever since last year's seminar. And so we are seriously looking in this direction, but we need to know what the needs are on the ground first. Now, nation building. You know that we're looking at music as a catalyst, as a trigger, as a spark to create that ripple effect. But what do we mean by nation building? I put this up because Merdeka, our National Independence Day, is 10 days away. And so we are now at this stage where some of us are already possibly thinking about what nation building means. When we celebrate our independence, and if you look at these pictures, for Malaysians, of course, we will recognize that the gentleman in the photo is one of our founding fathers, literally. And there have been many, many things that have happened historically since we gained our independence in 1957. But I want you to reconsider when we talk about nation building right now. Do you all believe that this is something that, even in this current context, is needed? Yes, absolutely. If anything, some of us perhaps feel some level of confusion as to what's going to be happening down the road. And we music therapists are very much in the position, and we are interested to help and to heal. And if we can figure out a way to mobilize and to empower all of us to figure out better ways to help towards nation building, it is really something that we are addressing. You will notice in some of the program content, there are actually presentations that look specifically at how music can promote national integration, can be used as a tool for social unity, and also to develop our community on many, many levels. Community growth. If you look at those faces, I put them there because they represent the hope of our nation. These are the children who are our future. I myself am a mum. I have a 6-year-old who's very precocious, and I'm questioning myself all the time, as I'm sure many of you who are parents here, or even students who are journeying and beginning your career, what is my place in Malaysia? What is my future in Malaysia? And where do I fit in as a musician? I just wanted to share this quote. This is from Tunku Abdul Rahman. I shared the photo just now for the benefit of our foreign friends. He is our founding father, and he says this. He's of course passed away by now, but this is what he said, and it still holds true. We are all Malaysians. This is the bond that unites us. Let us always remember that unity is our fundamental strength as a people and as a nation. And I think so much has been happening of late that has caused us to feel discouraged and to question whether we are able to achieve unity. Now, I actually brought this up because Help University is currently organizing a secondary event. It's happening on the main site campus, and they're celebrating the life of Rabindranath Tagore, who is a famous Indian poet. And I found this very interesting quote. He says that music fills the infinite between two souls. There's something that happens when you have that therapeutic intervention with music that creates a certain chemistry. You can call it magic, you can call it whatever you like, but the idea is that the interaction with music between two human beings and more can be very powerful. And we are going to be exploring that to the fullest throughout this conference. And I found this quote by Julian Portnoy, and he is actually a musicologist, and he said that music's value lies not in its musical structure, but it's in its effect on people. I know some people may disagree with this, some people may say we should be able to enjoy music for art's sake, and I'm not disputing that, it has its value, but this is something which I think society sometimes forgets, and one of the things I'll be doing as I continue with this presentation is to remind us of some of the key psychosocial functions and roles that music has in society. So I truly, truly believe that what Portnoy says holds true, and that music's value, of course, includes its effects on people. Now this is more Tagore. He said, I spent my days stringing and unstringing my instrument while the song I came to sing remains unsung. And there's this idea of music being able to express the unspoken, to be able to connect with us on a deeper level that sometimes unlocks and releases some of the stresses, the pains, the frustrations, the struggles that we have, that when we are able to surface through music, that we can begin to handle and find ways to cope with. Now, in Malaysia, I've just put up these random pictures. You will see on the left, there is this poster, UPM Music Cares. That was our inaugural event last year. And that was one of the ways that our band of music therapists started on this journey. And we found that the opportunities to create a social impact told us the work was only beginning. And if you look at the other two groups, the first one on the left with the young lady in blue, tudung, is actually part of a drum circle. And you know for a fact there's going to be 2 drum circles during our conference, beginning this evening. And the one in the middle is actually a group of performers that are going to be here tomorrow. They are very adorable. My daughter is one of the kids in this picture, behaving herself for once. And the idea is that all these represent the work that is happening in the community and the things that we are trying to do musically to actually practice what we preach. So whatever we are sharing with you through this conference is symbolizing and representing actual work on the ground. And you will get to see these kids perform tomorrow, and they have a really fun program that they have put in place. Now, when we look at the whole idea of psychological effects of music and the psychological sequence of behavior, we all have values, and these beliefs and values are often our driving principle. And what I want to challenge you to consider during this conference is to see what our own value base is. It doesn't matter what religion, what race, what background we come from. We are here from all over the world, but we each have our own set of values, our own mission, our own purpose that guides the work that we do. And so I want you to consider, how does music fit in within your value system? And how does that then translate into the practice, the kind of influence that it makes on the work that you do musically? And ultimately, how these practices eventually become a tradition. When they are recurrent, when they become part of our lifestyle, eventually they are part of our traditions as well. When we think about those aspects of behavior and the sequence, I want to juxtapose that with something which an ethnomusicologist by the name of A.P. Merriam in 1964 said, and he actually went and looked at the whole range of research. He is one of the giants in the field of ethnomusicology, and he identified 10 essential functions of music in society. And I would say that for us, we are probably more familiar with function number 2, aesthetic enjoyment, the ability to enjoy the qualities of beauty in music, and that's something that we often acknowledge and we often admire in music. And of course, this whole idea of entertainment, music is really, really being used to its fullest. When you talk about media, advertising, you talk about the pop music industry, there's so many avenues in which entertainment is being churned out and we derive a lot of enjoyment from that. Emotional expression, if anybody has heard any of the Taylor Swift songs, everyone says that every album that she writes literally is chapter in her life, and heaven forbid, if you were a boyfriend and you broke up with her, you might end up in a song. So there's this idea of music being emotional expression, and I think pop music does that very well, to express a lot of teenage angst, a lot of themes that are reflective of the struggles that adolescents go through. But what about music as communication? What about the fact that sometimes music is capable of communicating in ways that are both verbal when they're song lyrics and also non-verbal, and it's able to connect with us? How many of us have been in situations where we hear a song and it's almost as if it's describing exactly what we are going through, and sometimes you find yourself driving on the highway, and then a song comes on the radio and then you start to tear up simply because it strikes a chord. It's communicating to you. But what about us using music to communicate to others? When we talk about music often being used as part of early education, when we are in children's settings and maybe in kindergarten, and we're using music to teach academic concepts. That is a form of communication, and we're using the music as a vehicle, as a platform, to deliver those academic concepts. The alphabet song, the number song. How many of us until today, when we try to look through our alphabetical index, we'll still go A, B, C, D, before we get to where we want to go. So those were the early inklings and our introduction into the use of music to communicate, in that case, the letters of the alphabet. Symbolic representation. We are about to approach Merdeka Day, and we know there will be these patriotic songs that are going to be played. And they will each have different meanings for us, because every time we connect with a song, that song tends to contain a memory, a particular event, whatever it may trigger in you, because we often have these personal connections to music. And of course, with symbolic representation, some of us, of course, could be fans of Pokemon Go right now. Not me. Not that I don't think that it's a creative idea, I just don't have the time at the moment, too busy organizing the conference. But the idea is that music is often used as a badge, as a symbol. And you will see people, groups who will identify themselves as rockers, perhaps, or heavy metal fans, and they have this music as part of their identity and their badge. That's one of the ways that music can function as symbolic representation. Physical response. I was very encouraged to hear Dr. Intan share about the rehab work that's been done in Cheras Rehabilitation Hospital. And I want to actually share with you, I don't know if many Malaysians realize we actually have a very, very advanced rehabilitation hospital here in Cheras. And I was privileged with Dr. Intan's invitation to go and visit, and I am sharing it here, I am plugging in for you, because if you ever are in the position and you have family members who ever need rehab work, please, please go and see them. Find a way to visit the hospital, because they are rehab specialists and they're doing a fantastic job there. And as far as physical response go, it is actually possible to use music to help to either improve physical conditioning or to rehabilitate lost functioning as well. And tomorrow, this afternoon, I'm going to be presenting on the music therapy work that I've done in stroke rehabilitation. And that's just one example. I'm introducing here simply because there is this component of physical response that will be demonstrated in the stroke treatment context. Of course, enforcing conformity to social norms. We know that we all have our school songs. We had our national anthem just now. And those songs actually are trying to gather us and to unite us to believe certain values, certain things that are not only being delivered academically, but to some extent it's also reinforcing the idea of a social norm, appropriateness of ideals in terms of the patriotic context. And enforcing conformity, how many of us have heard of marching bands and have seen how a march functions to actually guide the response or soldiers when they are marching. Music is actually being used at that point to regulate and to help encourage the discipline of movement, and it's actually helping to develop that sense of conformity in their movement. Validation of social institutions, religious rituals. Many of us, if we belong to a particular religion or denomination, we would have music that's used for worship. And that cuts across all races, all backgrounds. If you're Christian, you have your hymns. Some of us may have our favorite hymns. And sometimes when we're feeling troubled, when we're feeling discouraged, we may just recall a line or so from our hymns, and that tends to bring some level of comfort. What about for our Muslim communities? I've heard colleagues in UPM who come and ask me, can we use nasheed for therapy? And as far as I'm concerned, as long as there are no religious restrictions, there's no reason not to use nasheed. And in many, many ways, we have these connections to religion, and music seems to be a part of worship and an important part of that religious expression as well. Contributions to continuity, stability of culture. I think this is really, really important. Whenever we create songs within our culture that reinforce, that reflect our identity, and help to perpetuate that sense of who we are as a group, as a unit, you just have to think about our festivities. We always have songs that accompany festivities, and in Malaysia, we just had Hari Raya not that long ago, and very often when we are walking around the mall or out in public, the moment we hear that first strains of Balik Kampung or of Selamat Hari Raya by Saloma, immediately it fills us with this feeling of festivity, of excitement. It doesn't matter whether we are Malay, Muslim, it's very much a Malaysian celebration, and that's a very vivid reminder of how much music contributes not only towards our celebration of the festivity, but the continuity and stability of culture. Contributions to the integration of society. I think this is extremely important. You may notice that from the beginning of the sequence, from number 1 moving towards number 10, the functions seem to be growing from something that functions more on an individual capacity towards the larger group context. And now we are talking about the integration of society. I want to remind you of what Tunku Abdul Rahman said about being Malaysian and how our unity is our strength. I really, really hope as we look at ways in which we are going to germinate, we are going to help expand, increase the types of work we are doing with music in community outreach, we also think about this overarching layer of national integration, especially as we are approaching Merdeka. Now, Harvard and North are two very established British music psychologists. I actually teach a course of music psychology at UPM, so I can talk for a whole semester on this topic. I'm just going to give you 1 or 2 observations that they have outlined. They said that all 10 functions, as outlined by Miriam, what I just shared with you, have a social dimension at heart. That's obvious, right? We can see that very clearly. And while the nature and form of music may vary from culture to culture, Miriam's 10 functions also continue to explain the psychological and sociological roles of music in contemporary modern-day culture. This is very much relevant. Even though Miriam came up with this set of functions in 1964, it is still very, very true of what we need today. So, taking back the idea of values. Our values define what is important in our life, the things we choose to do, why we do it. It shapes our motivations and influences our choices. Therefore, our beliefs about whether music is important in our daily lives matter. Is music important in our daily lives? Does music serve a function in human society? Is that function an important one? What is its psychological, sociological functions? I've just shared some of them with you, and I want you to reflect on that throughout our movements. How has music contributed towards meaning in your life? We had Dr. Gore just now share about his personal experiences and how music has contributed towards meaning. And I'm sure if we were to sit down and talk to each and every one of you, we would each have our own personal journey with music, because in some ways music has been the soundtrack of our lives. And so what does music mean to you? Why are you here? How can we use music in ways that will better contribute to society? Thank you.